Hello and welcome to the How to Live in Denmark podcast. I'm Kay Zander-Mellish. When you're not from Denmark, understanding the way Danes think can take a little time. But if you're an international manager in charge of managing and motivating a group of Danes, you may not have a lot of time to experiment before you're expected to produce results. So I wanted to share some of the tips I gave to a group of international managers recently on motivating Danish employees. Motivating Danish employees is very different than motivating other groups of people because there are two big factors missing: hierarchy and fear. We don't like to talk about the fear part in our various countries of origin, but the fact is true that in the US, UK, China, India, and in parts of Europe, someone who loses their job can be in a lot of trouble. They may have trouble paying their bills, might lose their house, might not have access to health care, might not be able to send their kids to university. That's not the case in Denmark. Everybody pays for those services through their taxes. So losing your job doesn't mean you lose access to these things, the way it might mean elsewhere in the world. And that means that employees aren't slightly afraid of their boss, the way they might be elsewhere in the world. And they're much more willing to speak up and disagree. They're not going to do just what you say just because you're the boss. Hierarchy exists in Denmark, despite what the Danes sometimes want to believe, but you don't always get a lot of respect for being at the top of the hierarchy. In this society where egalitarianism is a deep and cherished value, the person standing on a pedestal is kind of assumed to be a buffoon. You've heard of the famous Jantelov that informally governs Danish culture, and one of its rules is, don't think you're better than us. In the Danish environment, you're going to have to convince your employees that what you suggest is the right course of action. They're not going to do it just because you're the boss. And being part of the decision is what Danish employees expect. They expect to be consulted. They expect to be in the loop. I spoke to a nurse recently who was working in Denmark after spending some time in Norway, which is a pretty close cousin. But she said that here in Denmark, the doctors asked for her opinion on the cases they worked on together, which she said did not happen in Norway. Actually, you'd be foolish not to consult your employees. Salaries are so high in Denmark, you really want to use all that expertise you've paid for. So back to the original question. How do you motivate these highly paid employees? Obvious motivators in other cultures don't always work in Denmark. The chance to earn more money, for example. In Denmark, taxes are going to take a lot of that extra income, especially at the high end. And a better job title usually isn't all that exciting either. I know that in other cultures, when they're trying to placate an employee, gotta give him something. They just make him a vice president. Danes usually don't use the titles they already have. They're much more interested in the substance of the work than their place in the hierarchy. And depending on the employee, another popular motivator, the chance to have more power and responsibility, may not be all that exciting either. Many Danes aren't really eager to take on more responsibility at work, particularly if they have young children or grandchildren. They want to work hard and efficiently during office hours and then enjoy their free time. As a matter of fact, a survey last year showed that only 49%, less than half, of Danish university students said they wanted a job with management responsibility. That's versus 77% in the US. So what do Danish employees want? This is what I tell international managers. Danish employees want work they can be proud of. Having the chance to build a quality product or service or project is exciting for Danes. They do not like cheap merchandise. Doing work you feel is high quality or has a meaningful purpose is an important part of job satisfaction in Denmark. Danish employees want a feeling that their voice is heard. Danish employees are expensive, and you have hired them for their expertise. They expect to have the ability to share that expertise and see it incorporated into projects. And they want personal development. The Danish educational system emphasizes lifelong learning. So even older employees are going to want to improve their skills with a couple of courses every year or some industry meetups. This is seen as an investment in your team. All in all, the most important aspect of keeping your Danish team motivated is a good working atmosphere. Danes do not want to work just to earn money. They want to enjoy their time on the job. There's an expression I used to hear a lot when I worked in the U.S. Another day, another dollar. There's a lot of resignation in that little sentence about having to spend your workday doing something you don't like just to pay your bills. I've never heard something similar in Denmark. Danish employees want to look forward to coming to work in the morning. If you want them to feel motivated, make sure your team is a place where they can make that happen. And that's the How to Live in Denmark podcast for this week. You can book me for a speech on how to motivate your Danish employees on my website, howtoliveindenmark.com. Or get in touch via Facebook at How to Live in Denmark, or Twitter or Instagram at HowToLiveInDK. The 2 is a number. Thank you to Johan Højer for the use of his fabulous studio in Copenhagen. See you next time.